As I sit here with my Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past shirt on, while reading my Zelda Link's Awakening instruction booklet, I have to wonder, why am I questioning the fact that a brand new Zelda game that comes out in less than 2 days is retailing for $59.99? Now, at any other time, we would think $59.99 for a Zelda game, that's a steal, such as the time when Zelda Link's Awakening came out in 1993 for the Game Boy, or when it was re-released in color for the Game Boy Color. With a price tag of $29.99, we were thinking, wow, is this game really $29.99? That's all that it is? That's a steal! Flash forward to the year 2019, when the game is being remade and coming back out. Is $59.99 really a great price point for The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening? Stay tuned and find out. So the first point I want to make is that this game's dungeon designs are absolutely phenomenal. If you've never played the game before, you're in for a real treat. At least, I hope you are. You gotta bear in mind, these dungeons were made for a 2-bit Game Boy. These dungeons were designed for a game that was meant to be large for something that was really small. Now, here it is on a Switch game, so this game is going to be really small for something that's meant for something really big, such as Breath of the Wild. And while I mention Breath of the Wild, it's probably worth noting that since that was the last Zelda game that came out, that's the last game that we're going to compare, the last Zelda game that we're going to compare Link's Awakening to. And I think that's a little bit unfair. So when I see people online and hear people talking about how they're kind of concerned with the $60 price point, and they're comparing it to Breath of the Wild, when Breath of the Wild is easily a 120-hour game for 100% versus a game that might be 9 to 12 hours for 100%, I think that's a little unfair because Breath of the Wild was really made and intended to be something really big and large, meant for a more powerful system. This game, Link's Awakening, was meant for a 2-bit Game Boy. It was very large and powerful for what it was back then. However, made for the Switch, it's going to seem really small. So when you compare it to Breath of the Wild, at least bear that in mind. This game is not going to be that 100-hour open world adventure because this game was made in a much different time era and is meant for something a lot smaller. But the dungeons designs are phenomenal. They are really good, and especially for what it was on the Game Boy. Like I said, it was pretty big for the Game Boy back then. It was a big adventure. The designs are really well done, and what I mean by that is, well, the puzzles in them. The puzzles are great. Sometimes, in fact, the Eagle Tower, I think the whole dungeon is a puzzle, and that was one of the things that I really liked about it. Another really cool, unique item or design about the Link's Awakening is that there's side-scrolling in this game. Now, this was very different for Zelda's for a long time. Well, even today, the only other Zelda side-scrolling adventure that we've got is, of course, Adventure of Link and Zelda 2 on the NES, largely overlooked by many people and talked bad about by most of the portion of people who have played the Zelda games because it's kind of the one that sticks out like a sore thumb. It's kind of the black sheep of the Zelda family. I happen to like the game. I think it's really fun. It's a great RPG, and it's kind of fun in its own way. Now, is it a Zelda title like all the rest? Well, no, it has the characters, but it doesn't exactly ring the bell like the other. When you say Zelda, what you might think of. So here we are with the side-scrolling screen in a top-down Zelda game, which makes it really unique, and it's something really fun and cool. And it's also kind of a head nod to the Mario series because you see the Goombas in there. And I think that was pretty cool to see back then, and it's going to be pretty cool to see now, to see the kind of the crossover in between the Mario universe and the Zelda universe. So it's going to be fun for new gamers to get to see that and experience that. Any Zelda game for a long time, even after this Game Boy game. So it was one of the only Zelda games you can actually jump in besides Zelda 2. So this was really unique for that. It added that element that was kind of missing from Zelda and Link to the Past. which was kind of, it was, no, it wasn't kind of, it was really cool for us back then. It opened up a new puzzle and dungeon options for the developers. So for the creators, it was really cool to be able to have to find a way to jump, especially when you have to jump over a distance that was longer than just one tile. When you had to jump over 2 or 3 tiles at a time, you're like, well, how do you do that? Which brings me to my next point. This is one of the only Zelda games for a long time that you could unequip your sword and swap it out for another one of your items, which again made for pretty cool dungeon designs and pretty cool puzzles. So sometimes you might have to take off your sword, put on your Pegasus boots, put on your Roc's Feather as well, and now you can run really fast and jump really far. An element that you couldn't do in the previous Zelda games. So that's something that was really cool and unique about this game, and one of the reasons why I really enjoyed this game. And so for those side-scrolling sections, you have the ability to jump, which makes it, that much more cool. A little bit different from other Zelda games, and it's in its own right neat. I mean, it was really cool back then. We didn't get to see that for a Zelda game. So another thing that this game has playing in its favor is that it has one of the, well, to me, it was one of the funnest side quests in any Zelda game ever was. So there's 2 kind of main side quests, if you will. So one is finding the seashells, so you can upgrade the sword to be able to shoot a projectile. There's 100 seashells in the game, and they were very hard to find. I remember distinctly taking the shovel and just like digging up every single square of dirt in the entire game. I dug everywhere that you could dig. I lifted up every rock. I hit every blade of grass. I killed every enemy. I fished in every pond. I did everything you could possibly do to find the seashells, and eventually I did. So that was pretty cool. But one of the other main side quests that I really enjoyed was kind of passing on the items that you get from, it starts from the Crane game. You get a Kirby doll, and you pass it on to a little kid. You get to get a bow, and you pass the bow on to, I think it was a Bow Wow, which is a Chain Chomp from also Mario. Then you get, I think, a can of dog food, and you give the can of dog food to an alligator, and the alligator gives you some bananas. You can take the bananas to someone else, and something else, and something else. So to me, it was always kind of exciting to see what's my next item? What item am I going to get? So that was kind of neat. And what am I going to do with this item? Like, who I got to find somebody this is going to go to. So that was always a really fun side quest for me. I just happened to enjoy that. So now I kind of want to talk about the downsides to this game. So the first thing I want to mention is that, remember, this game was made for a 2-bit system, for the Game Boy. As I kind of already mentioned before about Breath of the Wild and comparing it to it is a little bit unfair. This game was made to be on a much smaller scale. It wasn't made to be this huge grand adventure simply because they did not have the technology for it to be a huge grand adventure on the Game Boy. But what they got out of it was monstrous, in my opinion. It was very good. For a game to be that long on the Game Boy. Look, when you're used to playing Looney Tunes on the Game Boy, a game that you can beat within 30 minutes to an hour, and then you play Zelda that you can continue to play for days and days and days and days and days and days and days, because you don't know what to do or where to go. There's no internet back then. You thought you had a really good value. There was lots of value in that game, and to me, over the years, there's been a lot of value in it, replaying it, and especially at the $30 price point. But I want to make mention that also this game was kind of marketed, and not even kind of, but it was, Nintendo in general and the Game Boy was marketing towards kids back then. So this game was really built for kids on the go. It its purpose very well back then. They chose to remaster this because a lot of people skipped over it, and it's just a really fun game. And one of the reasons why they chose, in my opinion, to retell this tale in this day and age is because it's one of the only Zelda games that has an actual story, more than a lot of the other Zelda games. It's not just Ganon who has captured Zelda. It's not just Ganon who's threatened the world again, and perhaps he's got Zelda detained, or Zelda needs you to do something for her. No, this is kind of totally different. This is its own story in its own right, and it actually plays out over the course of the game. It's not just like bits and pieces of the story here, there, and yonder, kind of like Breath of the Wild, but this has an actual story that you play interlaced throughout the entire game, which is, I think, adds value to this as a Zelda game, because no other Zelda game really does that. That's another reason why this game is unique. But on the flip side of that coin, this is actually, and also the same game that we had on the Game Boy all those years ago, which means it's the same amount of content for the most part, for a game that we paid $30 for before. Now that it's on the Switch and it looks a lot better, should it be $60? Well, I don't know. Usually it's the same game, but I think I've made a few points to make it good. And the game is refreshing. It's refreshing to have that fresh coat of paint. The art style is absolutely gorgeous. I think we're paying for the name more than anything, Zelda, the Mercedes of gaming. And that art style, the art style is really pretty. It's something that we haven't seen before on a Zelda game. It's pretty close to A Link Between Worlds, but not exactly. This game looks a lot better, a lot sharper, a lot clearer. The models look a little bit different. It's really cute and adorable. And I think that's another reason why people aren't, kind of getting behind the $60 price tag, is because of the kiddie look that it has. But again, this game was marketed towards kids. They just happened to remake it in a day and age to where gamers are a lot older now, and new gamers who never experienced this game before might be let down, especially if they're comparing it to Breath of the Wild. But I'm here to say that don't let that kind of deter you. This is a really fun game. It is well worth the 9 to 10 hour adventure. Now, is it worth the $60? That's going to be up to you to decide. Do you want to play this game that bad right now, or can you wait till it drops in price a little bit later and check it out? I highly recommend you checking it out at some point, whether you buy it now when it's brand new for $59.99, or if you check it out later when it drops down in price a little bit. I personally bought it with the Best Buy Gamers Club and got it for 48 bucks, so pre-ordered it for $48. To me, it is worth $48 just because I get to relive those moments I kind of had as a kid, but now with a new fresh coat of paint and looking a little bit snazzier, if you will. So it's going to be cool. It's going to be fun for me to replay it and go through those side quests again and see those dungeons and the puzzles. And it's just the dungeons, I can't really articulate how the dungeons feel to me different than any other Zelda game as well. But the dungeons kind of work together, or the puzzles work together for a dungeon as a whole, rather than sometimes the puzzles working together just to get you out of a room, if that makes sense. So that's one reason why I've always loved this game. It's been near and dear to my heart. I'm pretty excited about the release. The $60 price tag, that's going to be up to you. There is plenty of reason to get behind this game and to love this game. It's going to be a short one, but it's a Zelda title. If it's one you miss, you've definitely got to play it. And that's all I've got for today. But anyways, I love you guys. I'll see you next time.